very simple.
It's the gift, not the thought, that counts.
BCTV.
Good morning. Saturday is voting day in Vancouver's civic election. Up to now, I would suggest that there has been more heat than light. This morning, I want to deal with some very basic questions about where the two key candidates stand on simple issues. Like, for instance, is it true that an administrative decision has already been made at Vancouver City Hall to return the VMREU people to a 5-day week as of January the 1st? And is it true, and I know for sure this is true, that the police board has given official notice for the union to return to a 5-day week as of December the 8th? Now that's a big issue. Where do the candidates stand on that? Because every policeman and every City Hall employee wants to know where his chosen candidate thinks on these things. And what about the Cambie Street Bridge? What about the money bylaws? What about the ward system? Let's see this morning without equivocation, that means shilly-shallying, we can get firm commitments. First from His Worship, the incumbent, Michael Harcourt, Mayor of Vancouver, suave, couth, politically astute. And secondly from the attacker, described yesterday by Harcourt as a Republican recently here from the United States. His name is Jonathan Baker, and Jonathan is to the right, and Jonathan wants to clean up the dirty mess at the City Hall. That's one segment of our program this morning. And then I have a man from Toronto, and despite that fact, he seems a bright fellow. His name is Norm Stewart, and he is the national spokesman for a brand new committee of rebellion against the Canada Post. And this man, Michael Warren, with his definition of a letter out as massive tentacles to take over every means of communication in Canada, perhaps he'll tell us that. And then, fitness freaks are everywhere. But today you're gonna meet the fitness freak of all time, the Macho Man Schneider of the Webster Show. We call him the Incredible Hulk Schneider. But down to serious business after the break with Harcourt and Baker. Well, we'll make this a 10-minute segment, and I'll try and deal with it separately, but I may not. I may switch from one to one to one to one.
Okay. You gotta talk to Mr. Harcourt first, eh?
Yes.
Yeah, talk to Mr. Harcourt first, that he may switch to Mr. Baker.
No thanks. Yes, please.
Yes?
No thanks.
No.
I'm not smoking during the program. Now, don't let me.
Well, give me your cigarettes.
No,
The other way.
And you'll be going to phones after this.
Quite good about.
I don't quite know that.
No.
What about Steve?
So I quit it. You're a man of decision. Bang.
1 minute.
One, two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. George Puel.
Right.
7, 12, 14,
Okay.
15, 18, 19, 16.
30 seconds, Julia.
Well, you know I'm going to be in the field, so.
Well, you can be up the other end where,
Yeah, we're going to have a game.
You got it.
They will
Oh, we're
actually
gonna have a
there.
couple.
We're going to have a couple games. One at
Remember, he
Emily
played last
and one at UNEC. Now that's all.
He plays well. Forgot I never.
And he's running through. Two well-known faces this morning, of course, Michael Harcourt and Jonathan Baker. Handsome man, if a little bit thin on the top. Simple question. Is it correct that your senior staff, with your knowledge, have taken a decision to return the 5-day week to those city stall staff now on a 4-day week as of 1st of January?
No.
Have they made such a recommendation?
They are going to be reviewing a whole range of measures to be taken to balance out the budget on December the 7th, Jack. The new council will be briefed on December the 6th.
With the decisions already taken?
They will be briefed of the measures that can be taken to balance the budget for 1983. There are a whole range of things being looked at. That may be one that they will be asked to look at as part of balancing the budget in 1983.
Have you received a specific recommendation to return to the 5-day week?
I haven't received a specific recommendation because I haven't seen the staff report yet, which won't be available until next week.
It has not yet been completed.
No.
Are you aware that the police board has given the union official notice, 30 days, to return to the 5-day week as of December the 5th, 1982?
Yes.
You are aware of that?
Well, I'm chairman of the police board, so I'm very aware of it.
Are you aware that the union has rejected totally the pressure you put on them to give up some of their 4-day, 10-hour concessions?
But that was an experiment that wasn't supposed to cost any money, Jack. Our police chief, Bob Stewart, has determined that it has cost an extra $500,000.
$400,000.
$400,000 plus.
Started at
So-
650 and then dropped the figure to 400.
Well, that's what we're into negotiations with the union about now. So we're saying that we're exercising our rights under the collective agreement to give notice. That will be part of the negotiations, and I don't negotiate in public. We're going to do it through our police chief and negotiator and through the police board.
There is now a deadlock in negotiations, and the union has rejected totally the police propositions.
Oh, there's no deadlock in negotiations. There's negotiations.
The notice has been given to end
Yes.
the 5-day week as of December the 5th.
Yes, and that will be considered as part of the overall negotiations.
Questions now to each candidate in turn. They're both experienced. You have more experience, more inside knowledge. Can you answer the question? Are you personally in favor, yes or no, on the return of a 5-day week because of its inefficiencies noted to you at the City Hall?
No, I think the 4-day work week, Jack, has some very strong advantages
You're
to
in
the
favor
public.
of the 4-day work week?
Yes.
You?
The 4-day work week is an absolute scandal. It has resulted in reduction of efficiency and poor service to the public, and I can go into detail on that if you
No,
want.
we've got it quite clear. The mayor says he prefers a 4-day week. The attacker, Baker, says you would scrap it if you had enough clout in council if elected.
I would scrap it first thing.
But let's get it clear what we're talking about. We're talking about a full work week where people work 10-hour days, Jack, and there's been some dishonesty in this campaign where Jonathan has said, wouldn't you like to work for 4 days and get paid for 5? Well, that's a real disservice to our staff. They work a full week like everybody else
Forget
in
what
4
Jonathan
days.
says.
But it's important for the public to understand
the
the term.
time around the City Hall is that even senior officials are either off Mondays or Fridays for long weekend,
They are
councils
not.
on Tuesdays.
All our department heads and most of the senior people are on a 5-day week.
They work a 5-day week.
As a matter of fact, a good chunk of them work a heck of a lot more than that.
Only the VMREU is on the 4-day week.
Right.
Now, that's also experimental, and that can be cancelled arbitrarily by council next year if it wishes.
That will be one of the areas that will be considered by the new council at December the 6th and 7th.
Okay. Police, you will not negotiate in public in the police. Do you want to see the 4-day week kept by the police?
Not at the expense of an extra $500,000.
If the police union doesn't give in, therefore, they will go back to the 5-day week with your approbation on December the
No,
5th.
I said that it was agreed to by the union, Jack, that it was to be at no extra cost to the taxpayers. It has cost an extra $400,000 to $500,000. That has to be resolved.
Mike,
It has to be resolved,
as
Jack.
old legal aid fighters together, you and I know the moment
Yes.
you reduce the availability of your witnesses by 20% on a 4-day week, the costs of police overtime were bound to go through the
No,
roof.
there were supposed to be some compensating approaches to balance it out, and we've got to bring those back into play.
Yeah, but the witness management is so bad in the Crown system that it's
Not
got
now.
worse.
No, it's they've got full-time witness managers now, and it's improved immeasurably. It's cut
Fair
down
enough.
our overtime.
Where do you stand on a 4-day week or a 5-day week for the Vancouver police?
There should be a 5-day week for everybody. The 4-day week does not work, And incidentally, the mayor's statement is not correct when he suggests that all department heads are on a 5-day week. I can tell you a couple of department heads who you often won't get on either a Monday or a Friday, if you want to go into it.
Okay, that's that out of the way. Now let's get to some other basic things. Just by the way, though.
But Jack,
this Vancouver
let me
Symphony
just go
cable-
back. Yeah, listen, I agree with you, but let's go back to it. Police and fire have never been on a traditional 5-day work week. You know that.
You know,
They go on shifts. They go night shift, day shift.
5
It
days?
varies. No, well, it varies.
Yeah.
It depends. Right.
but anyway, both have made your position very clear on
Right.
that. Just by the way, this symphony thing, where I see the civic officials had to estimate the amount of money they were going to give the symphony, $212,000 for the strike losses. Are
Right.
you holding an investigation into the symphony finances, a real one?
Well, there was one of the Better Sun reporters
Good
who
report.
came to see me.
If correct, it's a big story.
Rick Houston. And I said, Rick, I don't like to have witch hunts. You send me the information, and I'll have our city manager and our director of finance check it out with the symphony to make sure that everything is being done kosher. Now, I don't want to also, as I said to him, I don't want to see the symphony be dragged through unnecessarily, particularly right now when they're in the middle of a fundraising drive. So, you know, his timing was
Fair
impeccable,
enough.
but it should be looked at. And I'm
You'll
looking
look at it.
Right.
You have not even bothered to go into the details of the symphony finances you were telling me.
No, I'm not an incumbent mayor, and I don't give a grant to the symphony yet. It's certainly a matter, however, that I'd want to investigate before I came to any conclusion. I wouldn't base it on what I saw in a newspaper report.
Would you base it on what the director of finance at City Hall told you?
Well, I suppose I'd take that into consideration. I suppose that the symphony could go investigate the director of finance at City Hall. After all, they ran up the bigger loss this year.
Next question. How will
No,
you...
hold it now. What loss? We had a balanced budget this year, so I don't know why Jonathan says
thought he
that.
was
They overshot by $23 million, and then
We
they had a
did
cut
not
afterwards.
overshot at all. I mean, you see, this is the kind of inexperience and misleading of the public that's starting to get me annoyed, Jack. We had a balanced budget this year. There was no loss this year. We, by law, have to have a balanced budget. We will have a balanced budget next year. Now, this man, with his inexperience and mischievous misrepresenting of the public, is doing a disservice to the people of Vancouver.
Well, there's such a thing as being pious and patronizing. The city estimated their budget and ended up being $23 million under.
That is not
As
true.
a result, they have had to reduce their expenditures.
But that's not true,
Because
Jack.
they are required by law to come in with a balanced budget.
Jonathan, you
You're
are
calling him-
telling a fib.
You're calling him a liar.
I'm calling him a fibber because he has been told by George Puel, he's been told by Mae Brown, he's been told by myself, he's been told by our director of finance, by our city manager.
The
He's
mayor,
calling you-
mayor
let me
shows
fin-
an
let me finish.
abject ignorance of his own budget system.
Let me finish. Our 1982 budget balances. In September, our director of finance city manager came to us and said, we've looked ahead into 1983. 1983, which doesn't start to January the 1st in most calendars. Don't know about Jonathan's. We may have, that was last August, September, a
20
deficit of $23 million of expenditures over revenue. December 6th and 7th, the new council will meet to balance out the budget for 1983.
The mayor is
Now, he knows that.
The mayor is being a cute politician. You just heard what he said about the $23 million, and that's what I'm talking about. They did not have the revenue and they had to make cuts.
In other
and that's
words, they-
bad financial planning, period.
But he's correct in saying that the city balanced the books in 82.
They're required
And
by
they will in
law.
83.
They're
And they
required
were-
by law to
and
balance
if
the
they cut
books.
them enough, they'll be balanced in 83.
If they cut them enough, they'll be balanced in
But
83.
each of you gentlemen has been guilty. No,
It's not
you've
a
been
question of cuts. It's not a question of cuts. We've got
Balancing the
lots-
budget.
We will balance the budget, but there are at least 10 or 15 ways to do that, Jack.
You have been quoted, and it's sometimes difficult to pin you down on quotes, as God knows I know, that there could be policemen laid off because of budgetary cuts. Do you anticipate that policemen will be laid off because of budgetary cuts?
We have asked every one of the departments at City Hall, everyone, police, fire, engineering, hospitals, services through our health department, every department to go through an exercise of reducing their 1982 budget 3% and secondly 6%. We have asked our departments to do that so that the new city council on December the 6th and 7th can be fully apprised of all of the alternatives that they can bring to bear to balance the budget for 1983.
But I put it to you that the policy will be reduction of the police force by attrition, and that you would not recommend laying off police officers. You'd do many other things before you did that. Surely.
That's right.
You
And
too?
we have made a pledge as a
No,
police board.
I wouldn't propose a single cut in police and fire. I think it's preposterous to suggest the 6%
Well, there may be
cut.
many incompetencies and inefficiencies down at the police department where you could tighten them up.
You might be able to tighten it up and you might have redeployment. But as a matter of fact, the crime rate is up, and so there's no possibility that I would cut at all by attrition the police. That means that cuts have to come from other departments.
All right. You have already got a secret plan to cut. How many will you cut?
Well,
I mean, I don't want a review. I want to know what you, after this campaign, are going to tell the employees at the City Hall. How many of them are going to have their throats cut by bacon?
here's what I'm going to do.
500 people.
I'm going to...
He says 500 people.
The mayor is not in slavery to truth. That's obvious.
He said there's 500 too many jobs,
I'm
Jack.
telling you this, that I will roll the budget back to the 1981 level. Period. It can be done, and I will do that. Now,
By firing people.
no. We will then enter into negotiations with the associations and simply say, here's what we're doing, 1981 budget, and I guarantee that's what it's going to be. I
That's
guarantee it.
$220 million.
Now, $220 million.
That's a $42 million chop.
$230 million.
It was equivalent to $220
Now,
million.
it's $230 million. Now,
You say it's a $42 million chop.
That's right.
what we're going to simply say to the associations,
And that's no
you-
police or fire
we're going to have to
jobs.
find the money. And we're going to do that. It may well be that the permits and licenses department will be closed a couple extra days
Well, that's
a year.
fantasy.
It may well be that, well, the school board's doing that. That wasn't a fantasy. It wasn't a fantasy when they closed the schools
Give
down
me a
for
number,
couple days.
Jonathan. How many do you think you'd chop off? 150?
I don't think, it may not be necessary to chop anyone
Oh,
at
no,
all. It
come
may
on.
not be necessary to
You were
chop
talking
anyone.
500
It may
extra
be
jobs.
possible to start out by rolling back the senior salaries, the $98.7
Okay, gentlemen,
thousand dollars a year guys.
You say that he is not a slave to the truth, and you call him a big fibber. Is that right? Why don't you use a good, solid English Anglo-Saxon word? Fibber, by definition, means liar, doesn't it?
Well, you see, I'm not
Doesn't
quite
it?
sure whether
Sure.
sure whether he consciously or it's because of his inexperience and lack of knowledge of the city is
Are
making
you
his
a liar,
statements.
Jonathan Baker?
So I use
I
the word
am
of fibber
telling
to
the
describe
truth.
what he's saying.
I am telling the truth, and I guarantee you that if anybody knows anything about how City Hall runs, they can roll the budget back to 1981, and no one will know the difference.
Michael Harcourt, incumbent mayor. Jonathan Baker, the attacker. Ingram's not here because he'll only get a few votes anyway. After the break. The ballot is secret, but these men campaigning for office in the second most powerful job in British Columbia had better answer these questions without equivocation. How will you vote on the world disarmament referendum?
Yes for balanced nuclear disarmament.
Yes for balanced nuclear disarmament.
How will you personally vote on the ward system?
Yes, and it's about time we had a word system.
I will vote no.
No on the ward system. How will you personally vote on the Sunday shopping plebiscite?
No, I believe in a restricted Sunday, Jack.
Do you believe in the present botched up law?
It's not, I don't believe in the present botched up law. We should have restricted Sunday right
You will
across
vote
BC.
no on Sunday shopping.
Right.
Harry Hammer, are you listening?
I will vote yes on Sunday shopping.
You will
because
vote-
the law should be uniform across the province.
And it should be uniformly restricted as we've had for 90 years.
Now, something that's barely been mentioned throughout this campaign. I want specific answers, gentlemen, please. Will you vote for the $14 million for the parks and recreation facilities?
I'm going to vote for the whole capital plan of $42 million.
I would also vote for the whole capital plan.
The Cambie Bridge,
That's included. I would.
the public library facilities,
$700,000.
the public works and fire halls.
$22 million.
You too.
I would vote for them, yes.
Now, these come as 4 different X's, don't they?
That's right, and we chopped it down, Jack, from $350 million worth of requests. So I'm urging the public to get out, make sure they've got some confidence in Vancouver, vote for the capital plan. It's a bare bones budget.
Yeah, well,
It
that's
is.
good. Mind you, you had to be hammered over the head on the BC Place Stadium thing to give these wonderful people any cooperation at all, didn't you?
I backed the downtown stadium from 1978 on. You and I talked about that 4 years ago. The
But
NPA wanted it out at the out at the PNE where it would have been an unmitigated
But
disaster.
I remember the incredible surveys you had done from the City Hall, which seemed to be redoing all the work done by BC Place.
No, you're talking about the two separate issues. One is the stadium, two is BC Place, and what's going to go on BC Place.
You are now proud of the stadium.
I've always been proud of the stadium.
Do you say God bless Bill Bennett and social credit for the vision and the
In
magnificence?
1979-80, when he bought that land, I said it's the second best deal in North America after Manhattan Island.
Okay. Do you say thank you, Premier Bennett, for that magnificent stadium in downtown Vancouver?
I think it's a magnificent facility that is going to work, particularly when we get a National League baseball team into it.
Yeah, and you're all for the social credit plan for the stadium.
The stadium I back right from
And
the
the
beginning.
bridge.
The bridge has to be redone. It's a dangerous old bridge.
Must be redone. For the stadium.
No, for the downtown.
And the stadium.
Jack, we've had 2 truck drivers go over the railing and drowned in Falls Creek because that old bridge is dangerous, it's out of date, it's got to be replaced.
Now, where do you stand on the stadium in BC Place? Do you think that the City Hall has wasted money on all these surveys to obstruct BC Place?
Of course they have. The City Hall has, the mayor has been the abominable no man with respect to these projects. The mayor has initiated a study to produce an alternative plan for the BC Place development, which makes it entirely uneconomic, impossible to proceed. The mayor, while he loves the location, obstructed the development of a road system, so we'll end up late on the constructions of the road. I mean, if that's leadership, it's a joke.
Jack, you know what? I keep hearing a ghost from Christmas past from Jonathan here. He keeps complaining about projects that are fait accomplis, that are completed, the negotiations have worked out successfully. BC Place, when the city has put its position forward, BC Place has accepted every one of the modifications that we've put forward so far. Because we want to see BC Place work and be a good neighbor. And let me just, in 10 seconds, run through it. We said 2,000 parking spaces by the stadium, they've now got 2,000 places. We said places for 300 buses by the stadium, they've now got 300 bus places. We said 3 large parks as part of BC Place instead of small little ones they were thinking of, they've now got 3 large parks. We said do the road system through BC Place so it links up with our own streets, they're now doing that.
They would tell me the reverse opposite of what you said.
Well, of course they would.
They just
but
say
they're
you've
doing
been
it.
obstructionist all the way.
And I don't care what they say. The fact is they're meeting what the city council says should be done on BC Place.
But it's a terrific stadium, isn't it?
You darn right it
Just
is.
magnificent.
It's going to work just fine.
God bless social
Particularly-
credit.
I've also
Do you
said-
say God bless social
I say
credit?
God bless anyone who came up with that stadium. I think it's a
See, I'm
magnificent...
trying to get you to say
And-
God bless, thanks to Premier Bennett.
I said
You
to the
have no
Premier,
graciousness
I
to
said
work
to
with.
the Premier, Jack, over 2 years ago, that acquisition of that land was ranked up there
Okay.
with Manhattan Island, and it's the best place for the
They're
stadium.
also saying,
and now let's get a
incidentally,
baseball team.
2,000 units of taxpayer-subsidized housing at BC
You don't
Place.
want local, you
Well-
don't want rental housing in there, do
Well,
you?
I want 15% senior citizen housing, which is in
That's
the
it.
provincial plan.
We disagree on that.
And they
Jonathan
want
and I
to,
disagree.
if they went through his plan, they'd never be able to afford, the project would never get built.
That's
Okay.
nonsense.
Gentlemen,
Look at the south side of Falls Creek. It works like a charm, and it pays for itself, and all Jonathan has to do is to take a walk through my neighborhood and see a community that works.
that's God bless Basford and $21 million. isn't
No,
it?
I'm talking about Falls Creek South Side, the city's development that has seniors, it has low modest
that's
income
God
families,
bless
the
our
disabled. It works just fine.
Okay, you may have at these people. We've got some specific positions from them this morning. And we shall now open the telephones, which will be working today, I am assured, after the break. You don't even have to tell people to get out to vote. He's obviously going to just make mincemeat of you. Your campaign hasn't been that good, has it?
The campaign, you will see that I am going to win, and I'm going to win very substantially.
Jonathan, you've come across with a weak
yeah.
image. You haven't come across as a strong image, have you?
Well, I wouldn't agree with that. I think some people have said that there have been things boring in this campaign, but I don't think high taxes are too boring.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know whether BCTV found it too boring when, when you have to lay off people. I don't think the public of Vancouver found it too boring when the mayor would like to see ALRT fail. I don't think it's too boring when they look at a mayor of Vancouver and they find that he doesn't have confidence in a product that's built in Canada. I think there are a lot of things that the media have said are boring, but I didn't find them so boring, and I don't think the voters found them too boring
It's
either.
not a question of boring.
Do you want to see ALRT fail?
No, I don't want to see
Were you
ART
against the
fail.
purchase of
I
the
was-
Canadian
I was-
system?
I was against the purchase of a driverless system. There are at least 3 others Canadian-built systems that have drivers in them.
He's
They're
against
proven
everything.
technology.
Oh, that's
What
your
I'm
left
against-
wing. I mean, you're just against it.
No,
You're
I'm not.
going driverless, but you
No,
know
I'm not.
that'll upset the bus drivers' union.
No, no, that's not it at all, Jack. I just happen to be old-fashioned. I don't like a computer driving me around.
Do you never go in an elevator without a driver?
That's a different story than going along at 60 miles an hour.
You know, the
on a
Canadians
train.
produced the arm on the Columbia spaceship, and this guy doesn't have the confidence in Canadian workers to build the train.
And you're only a Republican recently here from the States.
I've
he
been here
says.
for a long time, and I worked for JFK when I was in the States.
How long have you been here?
I've been here since 1964.
Do you still blow the flute?
I still play the flute regularly.
That was an unkind remark, you know, to a new Canadian. In fact, it was almost worthy of reporting to the Human Rights Commission.
The Human Rights Commission.
Yeah.
Well, you're just a big supporter of that commission, aren't you, Jack?
No. Because he's an American, you can't look down your nose at him.
I'm going to say it now,
Bob.
Jack. Webster 100% supports the Human Rights Commission. From now on is never going to complain about the Human Rights Commission.
I just
and
wonder
human
what he
rights.
thinks of the other immigrants in town. He
Yeah,
doesn't like
what-
Americans.
what-
But anyway, you
Oh,
can
he's
ask
very
him.
big with the Greek community.
Oh, I'm sure he's going to get 3 votes out of them after killing Greek Day. Yeah.
Yeah, but he doesn't want the American
No,
vote.
no,
You don't
no,
want the
no.
American vote.
Oh, I don't mind the American vote.
That's
I don't mind
kind
the
of-
American. I just don't like him bringing up these ideas.
He doesn't like ideas of any kind, I'll tell you. Any
Reaganomics.
ideas, that scares him.
Reaganomics is a disaster in the States. We don't need to be infected anymore with it up here.
So what we've got here is a reformed do-gooder trying to stay in the middle, and a social planner pretending to be practical.
A flutist.
A flutist.
I'm an unrepentant
Listen, the last
reformer. Let's
flutist
get it
we've
right,
had,
Jack.
the last flutist we've had in politics was Frederick the Great of Prussia, and it's time that our profession made a return to politics
That's right, with the good step.
with a good step.
Good step.
Oh no, good step. Yeah.
Go ahead, please. Where are you? Hello.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm calling on these 2 candidates, and I think I'll go back to the days of Tom Campbell,
Up a bit, please.
Bill Rathie, and Art Phillips. And I think that Mike Harcourt has the best program because he's not trying to pull too much wool over our eyes. Mr. Baker sounds very inexperienced. He talks rollbacks like the social credit Van der Zam, and I think Harcourt's got my vote. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll just take that as one for, what's your name again? Harcourt. Go ahead, please.
We've had an NDP mayor to run Vancouver City Hall at a salary almost equal to that of the premier of our province, a city manager to also run Vancouver City Hall at a salary almost
Well,
equal to
60%
that
of
of
the
the
premier.
prime minister of our country, and the mayor's political appointee of his longtime politically close sidekick, Reva Dexter, to a $40,000 plus job for what was allegedly to be 10 months of work.
Hold on for a second. How much you get paid as mayor, sir?
How much do I get paid?
How much you
It's
get
about
paid as mayor?
Around $50,000. The
Around
premier
fif-
gets $80,000.
Premier gets $80,000.
Okay,
Reva Dexter, she got what, 40-odd thousand?
She was a 10-month consultant to review our equal employment program, is no longer at City Hall.
Okay, the total cost of all 3 of these jobs to the taxpayer is over $200,000. And were it really like you claim that your job as mayor took up all of your time and kept you working long and hard hours, what have you accomplished through your past 2 years in office other than abandoning your mayor's chair to appear on various radio and TV talk shows at an average of 2 to 3 times per week and to assign yourself various all-expenses-paid trips to various parts of the globe, like your latest junket that you and city manager Fritz Bowers both went down to see, the World's Fair at Knoxville, Tennessee. Can you believe this?
Hold on.
Would you tell that man to take a break from reading his prepared text?
Supposedly
I can
to
answer
get
his
an
question.
idea of how to set up the provincial government's Expo 86, which you had tried to scuttle with your letter to the International Exposition Authorities in Paris.
Okay.
Good shot. Do you know that man by any chance?
No, I don't know.
No, he
Sounds like a pretty bright guy to me.
sounds like an NPA candidate, but I can't place him.
Sounds like a real philosopher.
Well,
and
it's-
so
No,
on.
he's got you on a couple of things there.
What's he got me on, Jack? He said, what have I done in the last 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay, what I've done in the last 2 years is, first of all, to bargain hard for the people of this city. Vancouver comes first, and I've said on the major projects, they're not to cost us money. If you want these facilities, do them right and pay for them, federal, provincial governments, major developers. Secondly, I have opened up the City Hall. I make no apologies at all for being accessible, for being available, for being accountable, and I'll continue to do that and enlarge on that.
Okay, and $98,000 a year is a proper salary for Fritz Bowers, more than Premier Bennett. Proper salary for Fritz Bowers. More than any deputy minister in the provincial government.
Fritz Bowers is paid.
98,500.
Fritz Bowers is the city manager, the chief executive officer of the
No,
city of Vancouver,
I'm not knocking
and
it.
does a good job.
I just want you to pat him on the back and say he's worth every nickel.
He does an excellent
And
job.
he's worth every nickel.
And he does a good job.
And he's worth every nickel.
He's worth every dollar that he gets.
Right. And you would cut his wages.
I would roll back the high-priced senior staff at City Hall first thing.
You see, we may have to do that, Jack, but Jonathan gets a great deal of pleasure in picking on our public servants. We're going to have
Nasty
to do some
man.
tough things. No, he's not nasty. He's just inexperienced and misguided.
And he's never been...
He's not a nasty man. He loves his kids. He pats his dog. He plays a flute. He's a good
And I
fellow.
roll back the
but
salaries
he's
of senior
inexperienced.
bureaucrats.
He's inexperienced and misguided. We
Yeah.
we may have to do a whole bunch of unfortunate things because we're in tough times, but we don't do it because we get pleasure out of
He's had
kicking
lots of
around the public
experience
servant.
paying
Two things I've got
overpaying
to
people.
raise. Is it correct that in September, the Vancouver Health Department appointed, and by City Council, 6 new unit directors at starting salaries of $50,000 a year? That the salaries have to be found from existing funds, and that the proposal in front of your administrators and yourself now is that line staff be laid off and services cut back in the City Health Department.
No, the health department is under substantial review right now, and I'm not prepared to comment on it.
But have you hired 6 new unit directors at an average salary of $50,000 each?
As I said, I'm not prepared to comment on the health department right now. It's under substantial review.
I'm prepared to comment on it.
you-
The statement is true, and it's also true that in permits and licenses, they have 12 line workers, each one of which goes through 5 levels of supervision. Can you imagine that?
Are
5
you aware
levels
of
of
the
supervision?
hiring of 6 new health unit directors at $50,000
Yes,
each?
I am, because I received a phone call from employees of the department who told me about that and other such things. The department, incidentally, went from 250 people to 500 people in
That's
the last
right,
10
Jack,
years.
and let's look at where that came from. That came during Jack Volrich and George Puel's tenure at City Hall, and do you know where they came from? They came from a contract with the provincial government to run the long-term care for senior citizens. They're provincial employees that we've taken under contract.
Yeah, I do remember that.
That's right.
That is accurate.
So it's that
That's
kind
part
of...
of it.
That's
That's
that
part
kind
of
of...
it.
You
It's
see,
also...
Another segment with Messrs. Harcourt. Mustn't say
much
Harcourt.
better.
You can
Much
say
better.
Harcope.
No,
That's
it's a
accurate.
cheap shot to say Harcourt.
That's right.
Say Harcourt and Cope.
And Baker after the break. Are you on the red hunt on this campaign? I've stayed away from the red hunt.
You don't have to go on a red hunt. I mean, Mr. York is an official of the Communist Party. When a resolution was introduced at Council a year ago condemning asking the Russians to withdraw from Afghanistan, only the Cope people voted against it. So there's no need to hunt. I mean, they're
Did they
open
vote
about it.
against that,
Sure, they voted against it.
Rankin and the boys?
Oh, it was tossed in at the end of a motion on Poland. And,
Tossed in the end. Here's the motion.
Oh, no, never mind
Here's the motion.
No, I don't need the motion.
But the mayor is running on their ticket. The mayor's running on
Well,
their
I vote,
ticket.
you know, what's he
Suggesting
saying?
he's a commie too?
I'm an independent.
Well,
you know,
I'll tell you,
that's
I wouldn't run
that's
on a ticket.
I know.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's
You can't
ridiculous.
say that. You can't say he's running
You
on
know,
their
that
ticket.
kind of a smear is...
You
Let's
can
get
say
back
that-
to the issues of this campaign, Jack. I mean, that
That's-
kind of smearing
I'll tell
by
you,
Jonathan
that's
is
an
getting
issue
very disgusting.
because it's a betrayal of the
Disgusting.
NDP itself. When
Oh.
the mayor moves and chooses to run with people
I
that are extreme
ran-
leftists
listen.
and is endorsed by a ticket by them, when he arranges for them
think
to
it's
leave...
valid
it-
to a point,
It's valid to
Michael.
a small point, Jack.
Okay, enough.
It's a big point.
Who have I been endorsed by? I've been endorsed by the Vancouver District Labour Council for the last 4 or 5 elections. You know that. I know that. Who they want to endorse is their business.
And Cope left
Now,
off 3 seats
you know.
so that these guys could run. They didn't run a mayor so he could run. And he's
We
running
ran- I ran my
Who's really
candidates,
running the
with
city,
me, and
Harry
we did
Rankin
it.
or Mike Harcourt? People
Yeah,
better
yeah,
ask
Far be
that.
it from me.
Yeah.
This is Mr. Oppmeyer, who was mad at me yesterday because I had Ari Hammer on. But you'll be pleased to hear, Mr. Oppmeyer, that, what's his name, Michael Harcourt, is with you against Sunday shopping.
Oh, good to hear.
So really, that's about all I need to hear from you. Keep my promise to get you on the air. And you want to advocate that everybody votes against Sunday shopping.
Yes, it's treated mostly like a non-issue these days.
It is a non-issue.
For many people, it changes the character of the Sunday, it changes the quality of life, and there's much more involved than just some profit loss or the...
In other words, the Sabbath is the Lord's day and we should keep it holy.
Well, that's part of it, Jack.
Is that right?
That's part of it.
Well, and the family, how about the family?
Oh, no, I'm inclined to think that way, too, but then I'm an old chauvinist Calvinist.
Good to hear that.
Good, thank you. That's all I promised to do for you, Mr. Rottmeyer, and thank you very much. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Would it be possible somewhere in this segment for Mr. Baker to telescope his past experience for a few moments prior to his arriving in this country?
You want his biography?
Shortly, briefly, not long-winded, please.
Okay, born and raised in Atlantic City, New Jersey, went to Amherst College, went to the Law School of the University of Pennsylvania, worked my way through college as a member of the AF of M as a flutist, moved to Seattle first, joined the Army, served in the Army, moved to Canada in 1964, and have been here ever since.
Wife and...
Much. Now, just very briefly, you seem to have a hell of an idea about the economics here in the lower mainland, British Columbia, and this side of Canada. What's your experience in that?
I worked for the City of Vancouver between 1968 and 1975 as a social planner, then went into my own law practice where I've had to meet a payroll and a practice law as a municipal lawyer from 1975 to the present. And I have the same knowledge of economics that any businessman does who has to meet a payroll and run his own business.
Good enough.
Well, Jack,
Thank you.
my family being in Western Canada is Selkirk settlers originally in 1813. We have known this area of the country for an awful long time. So it's not as though we're newcomers here. It's a family that have been around a long time. And I'd like to say that I have also run my own businesses. I had a law practice for a number of years.
And a small developer.
I had a,
You were a small developer.
I had a consulting company where we built nonprofit and cooperative housing and starter homes for young families at prices they could afford for the BC Federation of Labor and the BC Central Credit Union.
My family records were lost in the Great Flood, so I can't go back that far.
Go ahead, please.
I wonder what happened.
Yes. Good morning.
Morning.
First of all, I would like to take Mr. Harcourt through his 2 years of as being mayor. Now, when it came to the BC, to the convention center, he torpedoed 4,000 jobs. Not him possibly directly, but his NDP rent-a-crowds were always around, and eventually he got it torpedoed.
Sir, on Pier BC, I was the deciding vote on council and a 6-5 vote to keep the city involved and keep that idea alive.
You fought
was the
PRBC on detail day after day after day.
Jack, a minor detail like going from $25 million to $100 million, I think is worth fighting.
A few more things, Jack. The stadium, he would still have studies. Sure, he wanted a stadium there, but he would have had studies and studies and studies because he kept on mentioning that.
That's not true. I said put the stadium down there. It's the only place that makes any
More
sense.
studies. When Bennett said, I want to build it, you said we should have a few more studies.
I didn't say that. I said build the stadium.
And thirdly, now you're trying to torpedo the ALRT. And, you're the biggest disaster that we've ever had in Vancouver. And
That's my brother. He's mad at me again.
No wars either.
Okay, thank you.
All mankind is a
He's
brother.
not a slave to the truth. You're a fibber, the biggest disaster, a Republican recently from the States. That's what I like, a debate on a high intellectual level.
You have to vote for Ned Dimitroshin.
No, it's just a usual Webster program, that's all.
There's not. There's been a lot of good,
Of course
clear-cut
it has.
material
That's
out
what I
here.
said. It's been a usual Webster program. Don't be so defensive.
Oh, legal aid to the rescue. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Baker,
Yes, sir.
my question is in two parts. Number one, were you aware that the city workers on a 4-day week work a full 40-hour week? And if you were aware of this, and if elected, don't you feel that this deceptive statement about working 4 days being paid for 5 is going to get you off to a bad start with your own workers?
Well, one of the problems with the 4-day week is that the city switchboard is open from 9 to 5. The workers come in at 8:30 and leave at 5:30. So if you're trying to do any business at City Hall, you can't do it by telephone. Now, the other problem with the 4-day work week is that it is true that workers are not there when there's always 2 people involved in any transaction, and one of the 2 is either missing on a Monday or a Friday. They are paid for, they do work 4 days, and they are paid as though they work 5 days. They get a 3-day weekend, The fact that they work a half hour in the beginning and a half hour at the end and they have their coffee breaks and all that really doesn't impress me any too much. I don't know many people who work on that kind of a deal, and I make no
Jonathan,
apologies for it, and will stop the minute I'm elected.
There's all kinds of private companies that are on flex time, that are on extended work days. It's not a new principle that the City Hall of Vancouver thought up.
That was when we were affluent. Now when we're poor and near bankruptcy.
What's
and
the extra
rest of it.
cost involved? The fact is
It's
that
the lack of production that's involved.
So
there's-
it's an
there's
inefficiency and
that's
poor
not true.
production.
You've got greater staff morale in the areas.
Tell it to the guys
City
lined
Hall
up
where
at
it works.
permits and licenses.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good morning, Jack. I'd like to ask the mayor a question. In this time of fiscal restraint, I'd like to just know
Yes, sir.
why he's going forward with that disaster rebeautification project down in Marpole. I don't know of anyone down there who's in favor of it.
Which project in Marpole?
They're planting these, all the trees down there. They're spending unneeded money really down there with the little cobblestones and the whole bit.
That's a commercial upgrading that's that 2/3 of which are paid by the local merchants, and we'll get it back in extra increased revenues from a healthy, viable shopping area.
I've got a very important guest here whom I must get to very soon, but would it be fun to do a little poll? Or would that not be fair?
Let's do the big poll on Saturday. That's the one that interests me.
Okay, dokie. Have I any issues I've forgotten to tackle?
Barriers.
Oh, yeah, you're clear away all barriers.
Blow them up.
Your local option.
I say that neighborhoods are entitled to have protection from commuter traffic, and I've said that for 10 years.
Even the snob districts like Shaughnessy, where you don't see any kids or cars anyway.
Even Shaughnessy deserves to have protection from
The
overriding
mayor
commuter
on
traffic.
your show described himself as wanting to be the terror of through traffic. So he's not only the terror of the taxpayer, he's not only the terror of BC Place and Expo, he's the terror of through traffic. He's the producer of traffic jams, and we're going to get rid of those barriers on day 2 after we get off the 4-day work week.
Last word from the incumbent.
Well, Jack, I think it's...
Even though you're confident you will trample the foot player into the ground.
I think that even with this doom and gloom that's coming out of this fellow beside me here, it's a great city with a very exciting future, and I'd like to have a mandate for another 2 years to make it an even better city.
My thanks to Jonathan Baker. My thanks to His Worship Mayor Harcourt. Come out of your corners Saturday morning when the polls open, fighting, and may one man win. Next, the revolt against the post office. Thank you, gentle. After the break. Did you hear the program this morning? Oh. Yeah, I hammered him on the stuff all the way through. I will, I'm much obliged. Thank you. Right, bye.
Okay, this is the way the segments look, John.
The Vancouver.
This is the way the segments look. 8:30 in this break, 8:30 in break 6, and then your clip,
Doesn't matter.
and then 8 minutes at the end.
Okay,
So 8:30 and 8:30.
the one from the police union. Their study done in California is that the 4-day 10-hour has saved the city $851,000.
Oh, we want to talk about it. They didn't give us any choice.
I'll do that in the free-for-all this morning.
They didn't give us any choice except to call it. Say, okay,
Yeah.
now let's
Oh,
talk.
I knew that. That's why I was throwing it at you this morning.
Yeah. Okay, we'll talk before we go.
Much obliged. Norm Stewart works for General Motors. He's a lawyer for General Motors. But he's the chairman of an ad hoc committee of all kinds of influential groups in Canada to fight the post office's definition of a letter. Norman, first of all, whom are you speaking for this morning?
Well, Jack, I'm the chairman of this ad hoc business consumer group. It's composed of about 16 major business associations plus the Consumers Association of Canada. Some of our members include the CMA, Chamber of Commerce, Canadian Bankers Association, Retail Council of Canada, Canadian Life and Health Insurance Association, and others.
Business is big and small.
Business is big and small.
For the reason you're about to tell me, scared witless by the way Canada Post Office wants the Cabinet to approve the definition of a letter.
That's correct.
Give me your concerns.
All right. Historically in Canada, the Postal Service has always had a monopoly over the collection and delivery of letters. This has been preserved for the Canada Post Corporation with the Canada Post Corporation Act of April of 1981. However, the term letter has never been defined at any time in Canadian history for postal purposes. This is always let laymen use a common sense approach.
A letter.
A letter's a letter.
A flat envelope with a stamp on it that goes into a mailbox.
And it has to be capable of delivery by Canada Post. I think that's a common sense approach to the whole thing. Now, under the Canada Post Corporation Act, Canada Post has been given a mandate to define by regulation the term letter. They're not just, when they do that, they're not just simply defining the term letter, they're defining the entire scope of their monopoly. And then they've chosen, as of July 3rd of this year, to do it in very, very broad terms.
Now, for instance, they do say that a letter is mailable matter in any form, the mass of which, if any, does not exceed 500 grams, whether or not enclosed in an envelope that is intended for transmission to any destination or delivery to any addressee.
That's correct.
Now, that's a letter.
That's
but
right.
They go beyond that.
Yes.
How do you interpret their further regulations relating to a letter?
All right. That definition there, in terms of, say, business mail, for instance, it goes far beyond the traditional type of letter, so it now includes all invoices, computer printouts, inter-office type memos, bank statements, utility bills, your municipal tax bills, this type of thing. So all these paper documents now are now letters and very broad in scope. Notice when you read over the words there, mass, if any, and that's very significant because that takes in all the electronic type mail as well.
Oh, I missed that. The mass of mail letter, which, if any, does not exceed 500
That's
grams.
right.
It can't be nothing.
Well, little electronic blips going through the air under that definition would be a letter. Now, under the Canada Post Corporation Act, there's a series of exemptions to the postal monopoly. 3 significant ones are, you can use outside private couriers to deliver mail if you pay them 3 times the rate for each individual letter, and that's 3 times the 50-gram rate. You can also use your own employees to deliver your own internal mail within an organization, but they've never chosen to define the word organization, so we don't know how narrow or how broad that is. The other thing is, for electronic mail, while it's in the course of a transmission between 2 terminals, is exempt, but anything that happens before or after, Canada Post says is ours.
Are you telling me that if I was involved in an electronic system of communication by mail, from you to my broker, my agent will say, let's say lumber, from my office here to my export broker my log broker in Toronto, for instance, and then he passes that on to a customer, that they would grab that as mail?
Yes.
How could they charge me?
Well, this is a problem right now. They don't have a mechanism to catch you, but certainly the fact that once you generate a hard copy, a piece of paper at the end of that electronic transmission, they say that's now a letter. Now, depending on what you do with it, if you move it yourself, then they say you should be paying us 30 cents if you want to do that and let us do it. Or if you want to use a private courier,
you got to pay 90 cents.
Well, worse than that. It's the 50-gram rate is 45 cents per letter, so that means $1.35.
Are you suggesting seriously that they have a plan to monopolize electronic communication between third parties in Canada?
Right now, we don't know their intention, Jack. All we can do is interpret what they have in their regulation, and they have indicated that when electronic communication generates a hard copy, they claim it as theirs. But beyond that, who knows where they're coming from, because we've never had an opportunity to have a real dialogue with them to find out what their intentions are.
But it does look, apart from which they've now wiped out, on the basis of this definition, delivery of bulk mail. Where would that be?
All right, take my own company, for instance. Right now, we pay about $500,000 a year to private couriers to move our internal mail, and that's mail that is composed of, say, pricing information, statements, memos, this type of thing, computer printouts, from one office to another, in Ontario, out to our Vancouver zone office here, right across the country. If this regulation comes into play, and it will November 26 automatically, unless Canadians can get stirred up enough to stop the government, if it comes into play on November 26th, from that point onward, we would be paying in excess of $3.5 million to use the same existing courier service. Now, that's General Motors. There's any number of other companies, large and small. If you've used private couriers in the past and have more than one geographic location, you're going to come a cropper of this particular regulation. And the significance is what private couriers by and large charge on a weight type of basis for the movement of mail by them. So they'll have a box for a destination. You just drop all the documents in. When it's filled, they weigh it, and there's a fee times that weight, and that's the way it's paid. With this 3 times letter rate exemption under the Act, when you couple that with a sweeping definition of the word letter, every document inside that box will now become a letter, so you'll have to pay that courier 3 times the rate for each individual document. So we took samples of boxes. We found that a cost for a box on that kind of basis would go to about $170 a box from something around, I don't know, $20 or $30 now.
Does Michael Warren admit this conspiracy?
Well, Michael Warren doesn't talk about this thing. Michael Warren has taken a very low profile. There's very little in the way of public statements from Canada Post, so we really don't know what his intention is. And again, that's part of the problem in this whole thing.
More with Norman Stewart, who himself works for General Motors, but is chairman of the ad hoc committee rebelling against the potential interpretation giving the Canada Post total monopoly.
That's correct.
In mail in this country, after the break. On November 26, a thoroughly confusing definition of a letter by Canada Post will come into effect unless Norman Stewart tells me, unless Cabinet changes the definition.
That's correct, Jack.
What is the definition you want of a letter?
All right, what we'd like to see, we want to, first of all, we want to stop this process. We're asking that Andre Ouellette, the minister responsible for Canada Post, and his cabinet colleagues refuse to approve this regulation in its present form. They only have the alternatives of allowing it to become law automatically on November 26, or they could move at an earlier date to refuse to approve it or to approve it. We're saying, please, please step in now, refuse to approve this thing, and then sit down with Canadians and certainly the groups that we represent and other interested Canadians, and let's see if we can work out a letter definition that's consistent with the levels of service that you can actually provide as Canada Post.
Couple of questions. If they take out this mass, if any, in other words, if they take out the electronic implication, would that make you happy?
It would certainly improve things, Jack, because then you would just have their monopoly confined to the traditional paper door-to-door type of delivery. And we say this is a business that they have been in for hundreds of years. If they want to keep it, and if Canadians believe that's important to keep that business, all right. But when you start moving beyond into these electronic areas, new technologies, in areas that they have no expertise in right now, or at least they've never indicated to us they have any expertise.
Sure they don't.
Yeah, well,
by definition, they have no expertise in it. So if they take out the electronic, that'll help. But already, they've made life very difficult for these couriers who were brought into being, I veritably believe, because of the inefficiency and delays of the post office.
Basically, Jack, why these couriers exist in the first place, and first of all, you should understand there's different kinds of couriers and different sizes of couriers. The small ones exist because individual businesses across Canada of varying sizes, small and large, have unique needs to move basically their own internal mail. Some have to have it moved many times a day, some can wait for next day's service, some have large volumes, some have small volumes. These small couriers are prepared to come along and tailor-make an operation for you and to charge on a bulk type of basis. That way you can get an awful lot of efficiency in there.
Would this change prevent the couriers from charging on a bulk basis and make them charge on a letter basis?
Yes, and this is the problem. And what's going to happen as the large couriers are likely to come along. They've never been interested in this internal mail before. It just wasn't financially lucrative for them. I think they're more interested in national kinds of services or movement of individual documents. Now, they can come along with this 3 times rate and say, well, by God, you know, we have no choice. We're not fixing prices or anything. We have to adhere to the law here.
They'll skim it, whatever they can get. They'll make a fortune on it.
Well, they'll be able to move in for companies that have to that require this many-day service, multiple-day services. They will have to use those private couriers. The large couriers will move in, can bring some efficiencies to bear, get the business. Small couriers are going to drop out of business.
As far as General Motors is concerned, you move your mail at the moment for $500,000 a year.
That's right.
And it would go up to 3.5.
In excess of $3.5 million.
Which you'd have to pay to a courier.
That's right. And the problem with this is That'll generate money for some couriers that stay in business, but it may not generate a dime of revenue for Canada Post to reduce their deficit unless the cost for those couriers is just so onerous that you can't afford it, and grudgingly you move over to Canada Post.
And you say the Canadian Association of Consumers is one of your participants in this. They're similarly concerned.
Very active participant.
We'll put up that address later. Go ahead, please.
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Well, I have a statement to make. I'm sorry to disagree with you about anything that has to go from one place to another. It is mail, underlined, in any shape or form. Would a private courier deliver my mail, again I say mail, to the PAW or Inuvik or Northern Ontario, or would you be willing to pay the price you pay to couriers to the post office?
Well, there's two separate issues involved here. Canada Post talks about maintaining the universal postal service.
They will if you pay the price.
No, well, let me finish. Right now, that means when they talk about that, they're really talking about the door-to-door mail service that they have had under their monopoly for many, many years. Now, let me finish, though. That kind of service, we're saying, likely should be protected by a monopoly and should not have competition in it. These other areas, the inter-organizational type mail, they've never ever been involved in that and likely don't have the intention to get into it. It's just too diverse for them.
Well, I didn't get the message that you are in any way objecting to the Canada Post Office traditional universal monopoly on the delivery of letters as such.
That's right. And make no mistake about it, Canada Post tries to portray it that couriers are skimming off the best routes from them.
They are.
No, they're not.
City to city?
No, they're not. No,
business?
let me finish. In this intra-organizational type mail, Canada Post has never operated in that before and can't because you have thousands of different companies of varying sizes. They're not going to dedicate 6 trucks to one company and 10 trucks to another. So they've never had that.
Asked them?
No, well, yes, we have, and they're not likely to want to do it. Now, they've never had that business, and we say it's unfair to extend a monopoly over a business that they've never had and likely aren't prepared to provide a service in.
The government has many monopolies on health and every other section.
Well, the unique thing about this monopoly is that it can be defined by the Crown Corporation itself with very little input from Canadians to say how far we want that monopoly to go.
I certainly wouldn't want to give the post office a monopoly on electronic communication. The moment an electronic communication becomes a hard copy in the hand of your customer eventually.
The NPP have a monopoly.
Yeah, no, but why would you want to pay postage on that, in the name of God?
And the other interesting point there is CNCP is a regulated type of business. They can't go and just move and say, all right, by God, this is all ours now, we can charge whatever we want. They have to go before regulatory boards. Canada Post doesn't. There's nothing to control them, and very little opportunity for Canadians to say, well, what are your costs? Why do you want to raise the letter rate? Why do you need this monopoly?
Thank you, ma'am. You make some good points. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
That's you.
Yes? I was wondering, the previous caller was talking about private mail. I managed a hotel night shift for 2 years. When I moved from there, they refused to take my change of address because they will not forward mail from anybody in a hotel. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
They returned my $1.50.
And wouldn't forward your mail. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jeff?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd just like to say a couple of things here to you, to your guest. I'm a truck driver with Canada Post, and I would kind of like to know if this guy has ever heard of priority post in his life, and as far as inter-office mail goes from one part of the country to another, and whether it's cost-effective for him or not. And another thing I'd like to say about his private couriers that he's always talking about, these companies go ahead and they pay a private courier to pick up their bulk mail and take it down to the main post office for sorting and being sent out by us.
Well,
every day, we find the stuff thrown into the nearest mailbox 2 blocks or 3 blocks away from where the courier picked it up.
Well, is that on the point? I can believe what the driver tells me is correct, but is it on the point?
First of all, the priority post. This is the area where Canada Post would like to, obviously has moved into this area and would like to get further involved in it. But what you have there are generalized lines of courier services, not unlike what the large private couriers do. This isn't the tailor-made thing to individual needs of small and large businesses. It's very specialized, and it's a different ballgame altogether.
Yeah, but I don't think the caller gets the point. Are you concerned as a Canada Post driver that Michael Warren wants to take over electronic communications, it would seem?
Well, they've done it in England. I don't see why they can't do it here.
Have they?
Well,
all telecommunications come in under the post office in Great Britain.
In certain European countries, he's correct. They have sort of expanded out into non-traditional mail areas. But, you know, again, is that what we want to do here? We're at a time in our economy where we should be sitting back, and make no mistake about it, this is a government service like any other government service. We've got a right as Canadians to ask, what kind of service can you provide? Tell them what kind of service we expect, and then determine how much we're prepared to pay for it vis-a-vis other services that are available.
Norm Stewart of the Ad Hoc Committee against the postal definition of a letter after the break. Norman Stewart opening our eyes to the potential octopus operations of Canada Post Office if they redefine a letter as everything from breathing upwards. It would seem that, wouldn't it?
Just about.
Mass, if any. You really believe that there is a move in here to take over electronic communication other than between two terminals?
Right now, clearly there isn't, but certainly if you can control what happens at either end of an electronic communication, you certainly have pretty good death grip on the whole operation then in terms of costs.
And if the Cabinet doesn't delay this definition, it becomes effective November?
Becomes law November 26, but is not implemented till April Fool's Day 1983.
And have the regulations to go with this been written or not?
Well, they've been written in the sense that they're proposed. They were published once in the Canada Gazette on July 3rd. There's only 2,500 subscribers to the Canada Gazette in the country. It's the middle of the summer. The House of Commons isn't sitting, and very few people are even aware of it. It's only lately that we, through whatever efforts we've been able to make.
Just let me get the importance of this in my own mind. At present, we have a courier service. You can have private couriers.
Yes.
And these private couriers must charge 3 times the 50-gram rate for delivery of a letter.
Each
they
individual
must
letter.
Charge that.
They must charge it.
Now, up to now, you've had couriers for bulk deliveries on a bulk.
That's right.
You're fearful if this comes in, every single letter would have to be charged at the rate of 3 times?
That's right. And these would be non-traditional letters as well, the bank statements.
So therefore, this is one very much keyed at business.
Yes.
God, they could do very well to help the deficit, couldn't they?
Well, that's true, and this is part of the problem. The other area is the area of municipal bills and public utility bills. Canada Post says that all those bills are ours, really, and they're part of our monopoly, and we want them.
And you can't deliver them.
You can't deliver them.
You'll be breaking the law if you deliver them.
That's right. So you'll have to let us do it. And to me, this seems just a totally ludicrous thing. These bills have been delivered for years and years by the utilities or by...
I noticed the ICBC's objecting to this too.
Yes.
Okay.
Vancouver City Savings and Credit Union is objecting, and any number of people out here as well.
Credit unions, all these kind of people. Go ahead to Norman Stewart.
Mr. Stewart called this ludicrous. I would say rather that it's sinister in my view. I have a question, but it's based on the fact that I don't share the earlier caller's optimism about government control. I think we get more than we pay for when they take things over. We get control as well as service. And I think the one caller drew a parallel to Europe. Well, do we really want to turn into some of the countries that Europe has turned into, like Poland, for example? Anyway, how do you propose that Canadians get involved in this process? I agree that the octopus operation has gone pretty far in Canada, and as I say, I don't share the usual optimism about our country and government control, but how would we get involved?
All right, what we've asked Andre Ouellette, the minister responsible, we met with him on November the 1st of this year. We asked that he, first of all, refuse to approve this regulation in its present form and give us a reasonable period of time. And we said that that time could be not inconsistent with the April 1st, 1983 implementation date for this bill. Give us a period of time in there in which we can have discussions with Canada Post, but more importantly with the government, because the government shouldn't be in a position of abdicating its responsibility for this particular service. They should be there and they should be part of the discussions. And what we're encouraging people to do is either write to the Consumers Association, your local branch, write to your Member of Parliament. You don't need to put a stamp on that letter to the Member of Parliament. Write to Andre Ouellette in Ottawa. Don't need a stamp for that either. And express your concern that, no, we at least want to be able to sit down with you as Canadians and try to sort out a better letter definition that's consistent with your aims and our expectations, and then we'll sort out the issue of cost, what we're prepared to pay for it, and do it in the most efficient way. Because what's happening now is very, very inefficient. And at a time where we're struggling to maintain a competitive position in world economies, this thing is just going to drive us further behind.
I agree, and thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Webster?
Yes.
Yes. I'd like you to ask the gentleman there why it takes on election day of Tuesday, May the 22nd, 1979, apparently, a voter's notice to the polls was sent to me.
No, ma'am, that's no good to me. That's not on the topic at all. Go ahead from Qualicum.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Yes.
I think Mr. Warren would do better to devote his time and energy to improving the efficiency of the postal delivery service. First-class mail from Britain to Qualicum takes from 12 to 30 days.
I know.
I received a letter from Glasgow just a week ago, which took 25 days.
I'm sure it's held hostage in Montreal for some time when it gets off the plane.
Well, you know, in this present day, with several flights daily from the United Kingdom to Vancouver, and with the present-day technology, one would have to be a genius to delay mail on this scale.
Well, this is part of the problem. This regulation does nothing to improve the efficiency of Canada Post, but it may well generate them a lot of money in a very inefficient way.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Yes, the postal system right now is operating at a 90% efficiency on target. The telecommunication system and Teledon are a direct threat to jobs in the postal system. Now, when the Japanese automakers came up with a better product than the local industry here, they started to sweat, didn't they?
Okay, we've only got a minute to wrap that up, less than a minute. Teledon and all these things are a threat to the postal system.
Well, I don't see them as a threat, Jack. I mean, services are constantly evolving, and you can't maintain a Neanderthal organization, and I'm not saying that the Canada Post is, but you can't maintain history as new technologies come along. And to hold those technologies back just to preserve and total a structured kind of organization doesn't make a lot of sense.
My thanks to Norm Stewart, himself of General Motors, chairman of the ad hoc committee, and if you want to join the protest, we'll show you the Consumer Affairs address for the local complaints. Thanks, Norman.
Thanks.
We'll keep in touch. I'll be back with Macho Man after the break. The world is fitness crazy, and nowhere more so than among the Webster crew, composed of taut, finely muscled professional athletes who double in television. So we sent the Macho Man, one of my reporters, Mark Schneider, out to demonstrate how fit he is.
Jack, I'm going to take the plunge. You know, I'm about 30 pounds overweight. I smoke, I'm going to quit, and here I am at the Cameron Recreation Center. I've come here to see what this fitness craze is all about. All these people are coming in here to come to fitness first, to dance their way into fitness. To me, it sounds like a really easy thing to do.
Schneider is known officially from here on as Macho Man, the Incredible Hulk. Now, a couple of minutes to fill. Oh, for the record, City Council, I'm quite convinced city administrators have taken a firm decision to go back to the 5-day week in January next year. No nonsense. The police are up against a total deadlock now. They've been told the 4-day week ends on December the 5th. The police union says that they've saved the city $851,000 by the 4-day week, 10 hours a day. And the police board says, no, it's cost us $500,000. It's one of these issues that has been buried in this campaign. And at least there's a complete division between, what's his name, Harcourt and Baker on that. Baker is all for the 5-day week. And Harcourt is for the 4-day week if it doesn't cost too much money. What else have I got this morning? That was good. We've got a couple more. What else was I going to mention this morning? Oh, yeah, don't forget, no, I can't do that case now, too late. Don't forget, I'm going to be at Woodward's Oak Ridge tomorrow between 12:30 and 1:30 to autograph that other guy's book for which I wrote the foreword. Be a laugh if nobody turns up. I shall be humiliated. Oh, it's a possibility, and I'll be back after the break. Magnificent book. Terrific book. Wonderful pictures. The best thing in it is the foreword, which I wrote. And the pictures are great. And I don't get royalties in the book. I just got paid for writing the foreword. Didn't get paid enough either. But I did get paid for it. Tomorrow we're a bit up in the air for the moment, to be quite honest. Sherman Hines is going to be on, and then we're going to autograph books and a couple of other things going. Not quite sure what's on tomorrow morning, but it'll be sparkling as usual with Webster at 9 a.m. precisely. Harcourt and Baker, the last word. Check at midnight.